Welcome to Pinnacle Tutorials. To access our entire curriculum, join Pinnacle Tutorials and gain access to lecture videos such as this, study resources, as well as revision content to help you excel in your studies and score good grades. In today's lesson, we're going to look at Unit 1, Business, Environment, and Society, and Unit 2, the External Environment. By the end of this lesson, you will understand how businesses are organized, why the environment around a business matters so much, and the specific forces that shape how a company like Zanaco, MTN, or even a small tuck shop in Kitwe operating every single day. Let us begin. We will start right from the beginning. For a long time, the earliest management theories, such as scientific management and bureaucracy, treated the world outside a business as if it was simple and predictable. Managers back then focused almost entirely on what was happening inside the four walls of the factory or the office. Think of it like someone who only ever looks at their own kitchen and never checks what is happening in the market while they buy their food. As long as the kitchen was efficient, they believed the business would succeed. But by the 1960s, thinking started shifting. Businesses began to be seen as open systems. This simply means a business is not a closed box. It breathes in and out, constantly interacting within and outside its environment, meaning it interacts with everything around it. And this interaction happens through three types of transactions, which have been categorized as receiving inputs, transforming inputs, and producing inputs. Now, let's go through them one by one. The first is receiving inputs. This is where the business gathers what it needs to operate. For example, labor, which is its workers, capital, which is just its money and equipment, materials, which are the raw resources, as well as information, like the market research or customer feedback. Let's take an organization like Zambif, which is bringing in cattle, feed, workers, and market information before it can even begin operating. After the receiving inputs, we now have the transforming inputs transactions. This is the actual work of turning raw materials into something useful or the making sense of information. In our example of Zambif, it can involve things such as slaughtering, processing, and packaging that meat so that it can be sold to the clients. This is a perfect example of transformation. The third transaction is producing outputs, and this is the final step. This is the stage where the business sells its finished products or delivers its service to the public. When you walk into ShopRite, for example, and buy packaged beef from Zambef, you are receiving the output of the entire chain. Now, here's the key idea of this whole unit. The environment around a business is full of both controllable and uncontrollable factors, and these create threats as well as opportunities. Some things a business can manage, like its own pricing, for example, or the staff levels of the people it has employed. Other things it simply cannot control, for example, a drought that is affecting the price of maize, or a new government regulation. This environment includes competitors, regulatory agencies, economic factors, and stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, and shareholders. Let us now go on to look at business and its society. Business and society need each other. A business organizes resources such as land, labor, and capital to provide goods and services that society wants. In return, society provides the resources and the social network. The customers, the workers, the roads, the schools that train the future employees that allow the business to exist in the first place. Neither one can survive without the other. This is why we study how society affects business and how the two can work together so that both can benefit. Every business owner has to choose a legal form for their business, and this choice depends on their tax situation and both their short term and long term goals. And this is what gives rise to the different forms or types of business organization. Let's walk through the three primary forms. The first is the sole proprietorship. This is a business that is owned and run by just one individual, and this individual is personally responsible for every debt the business owes. Think of the woman that is selling vegetables at a market store, or even one person who's doing a graphic design business. The advantages here is that these particular individuals have complete freedom in this business, and there's also simplicity in setting up such type of businesses, and there's also no complexity in closing these businesses. Similarly, these businesses are low to start up, and oftentimes they have specific tax benefits when they are just starting up. These tend to highlight some of the advantages of a sole proprietorship. However, there are also some disadvantages that are serious. For example, there is unlimited liability, meaning if the business falls and owes money, the owner's personal house or car can be seized to pay those debts. There is also a lack of continuity, meaning if the owner dies, the business often dies with them. And finally, there are limited financial and managerial resources since it all rests on one person. The second form of business is a general partnership. This is a business with two or more owners who share both the operational work and the financial responsibility. Think of two friends who open a law firm or an accounting practice together. The advantages are a larger pool of talent and capital since you now have more than one person's resources. It is also easier to access bank loans because the bank sees more backing and relative simplicity to proprietorship in some ways. You also learn that there are some disadvantages to this form of businesses. Though the general partnership tends to mirror the sole proprietorship in some ways, you'll find that they also have unlimited liability for all partners, which can be a risk. The debt of one partner can easily spew into the debt of all partners. There's also a lack of continuity if a partner leaves or passes away. This business also has a highlight of difficulty in transferring ownership, and there is also the potential for internal conflict, which anyone who has been in a business partnership will tell you is very real because not all parties tend to agree and see things from the same perspective all the time. The last form of business, which is the third one but definitely not the least that we're going to look at, is the corporation. A corporation is a legal entity created by law, which is managed by a board of directors who are accountable to the stakeholders, the shareholders who own the shares in the company. There are two forms of corporations, a public corporation and a private corporation. A public corporation, like a company listed on the Lusaka Securities Exchange, has stock available to the general public. A private corporation, on the other hand, is owned by a small group of people, perhaps a family or the employees themselves. The advantages of a corporation are significant. These include limited liability, meaning investors only stand to lose what they actually invested, nothing more. Legal continuity, meaning the company keeps existing even if the founder dies or leaves. There is also professional management and an easier ability to raise money by selling shares. But there are also some disadvantages to this form of business. For example, potential hostile takeovers. There are also high costs to form a company and heavy regulations, and something called double taxation, where the company's profits are taxed twice. They are taxed when charged on the company and then taxed when paid out as dividends to shareholders. Aside these three forms, there are also some other spatial forms of businesses that we can look at. Let us look at these spatial forms of businesses. We'll begin with a limited partnership. Limited partnerships have active partners who run the business on a daily basis, and they have the limited or silent partners who provide capital but take no active role and have limited liability. There are also joint ventures. Joint ventures are temporary alliances where two or more parties come together for one specific project and then dissolving once that project is done. Think of two construction companies teaming up for a single road contract. And then once that contract is done, they can all go to operating as independent companies again. We also have cooperatives, and cooperatives are a group of individuals or small businesses that join together to act as one larger entity for marketing and purchasing power, where the profits are divided among the members rather than paid out to stockholders. A farmers' cooperative pooling resources to buy fertilizer in bulk is a good example of a cooperative. Let's take a moment to think of one business you know personally, maybe a family business or a shop in your area, and ask yourself, which of these three forms does it fall under, and why do you think the owner chose that structure? Now, let's move on to Unit 2. The external environment. The external environment is defined simply as everything outside the organization that has potential to affect it. This is divided in two layers: the general environment and the task environment. Think of the general environment as the wide, distant weather system that affects everyone in the country, and then the task environment as the specific neighbors and people you deal with directly every single day. Let us now go on to look at each of these environments separately. Let's start with the general environment. This consists of broad, non-specific forces surrounding the organization. First is the political and legal environment. These are the laws and how they are interpreted. Laws that require firms to compete fairly, that protect consumer rights as well. Every business has to navigate regulations. Every business has to navigate regulations, and if they fail to comply, they face fines and bad publicity. So, businesses often try to influence the political legal environment through activities such as lobbying, advertising, and campaign contributions. This is an assertive yet passive way of trying to have a non aggressive interaction that is profitable with this form of an environment. The other aspect of the general environment is the economic environment. This includes conditions like inflation, interest rates, unemployment, and disposable income, all of which strongly affect how much people spend and how successful a firm can be. When the kwacha weakens against the dollar, for example, importers feel it immediately, and executives use this economic information to guide their strategic decisions. The third force is the technological forces. This does not refer to technology particularly, but rather The application of scientific knowledge and innovation. New technology can make old products obsolete. Think about how mobile money completely changed the way people in Zambia send cash, reducing the need for physical bank queues. It can also improve production or distribution. Managers use something called technology assessment to try and foresee these changes before they hit. The fourth force is the social cultural environment, understanding how society and social changes affect a business, its industry, and its markets. If more people start preferring online shopping over physical stores, that is a social cultural shift a business must respond to. The fifth force is international forces. As international trade grows, you will observe that firms must think about language differences, currency exchange rates, different national laws, and political stability. A Zambian company, for example, that is exporting copper or importing goods through the Democratic Republic of Congo or South Africa has to manage all of these factors at once. Hence the need for them to be considerate of international forces. Let us now go on to look at the task environment. So the task environment is more specific. These are the players who influence a business directly, and there are seven of them. The first being competitors. Competitors are other organizations fighting for the same resources. Most importantly, customers. This includes companies making similar products, companies making substitute products, and generic competitors who solve the same problem in a completely different way. MTN and Airtel are competing directly for mobile subscribers, and these are clear examples of competitors. The other force is the customers. Customers are the people or organizations who pay for the goods or services. This section also introduces the consumerism movement, which pushes the right to be safe, the right to be informed, and the right to be heard, and the right to freely choose for customers. Another element of the task environment are the suppliers. Suppliers provide resources that organization needs, for example, raw materials, machinery, capital through the banks, human resources, and information. The other element we can look at are regulators. Regulators are simply bodies that can control or influence a firm's policies. This includes government regulatory agencies protecting the public. For example, the Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency or the Zambia Consumer Protection Commission, and even interest groups that use media to push businesses towards certain behaviors that are ethical as well as socially responsible. We can also highlight external labor or unions. These also tend to deal with the company directly. If a union is legally recognized, the business is required actually by law in Zambia through the Industrial and Labor Relations Act to bargain with the mother body representing the employees. This is how come it is often a thing, especially in mining companies, to hear union leaders advocate for the salaries of the employees whenever they feel that companies are making money, enough money to be able to make adjustments to employee remunerations. The other parties that fall under the task environment are the owners. And the owners are simply who we call shareholders or stockholders. And these are used to sit quietly on the sidelines, but increasingly they are taking active roles in influencing how management runs the company. Finally, we can also look at strategic allies. For strategic allies, these are two or more organizations that are working together, often through joint ventures, to share expertise or spread risk. This brings us to the end of Unit 1 and Unit 2. Let's recap quickly. In Unit 1, we learned that businesses are open systems that receive inputs, transform them, and produce outputs. We also learned that businesses and society depend on each other and that owners must choose between sole proprietorship, partnerships, and corporations, and each with its own advantages and disadvantages. In Unit 2, we learned that the external environment splits into two, which is the general environment, the wide forces like politics, economics, technology, and society, as well as international trade, and then the task environment, which has seven direct players: competitors, customers, suppliers, regulators, union owners, and strategic allies. Before you go, try this. Pick any Zambian company that you interact with regularly and identify one general environment factor and one task environment factor currently affecting it. This is exactly the kind of thinking your exam will test you on. Thank you for learning with Pinnacle Tutorials, and remember, joining our full curriculum gives you access to more lecture videos, past paper solutions, and revision packs to help you excel. See you in the next lesson.